It clamped my hand, and before I knew it, my bone had fractured.
In that instant, everything changed. The power behind Malia's jaws, meant for fish and force, had turned on the very person who had spent decades beside her. June 2022. SeaWorld Orlando. What started as a routine interaction behind the scenes would leave a veteran trainer seriously injured. Her name, Rachel Thomas. Her attacker, a 5,500-pound killer whale named Malia. As Thomas reached into the orca's mouth to remove peeling paint chips, Malia clamped down, crushing her arm with unimaginable force. The injury was severe, the response immediate. But what came after would raise serious questions about SeaWorld's safety culture and its silence. OSHA launched an investigation. Internal memos warned staff, but the incident was never shared publicly until now. What really happened in that poolside encounter? Was it preventable, or just part of the risk of working with apex predators? Welcome to the Animal Quest channel. If you care about animal safety, trainer welfare, or the truth behind these marine parks, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to see it. Now, let's start. She was known to nearly every trainer at SeaWorld Orlando, not just for her experience, but for the quiet authority she carried. Rachel Thomas wasn't a newcomer to marine life. She was a legend. With over 40 years of hands-on experience, she had been part of SeaWorld since the early 1980s, rising through the ranks not with arrogance, but with grace and unmatched dedication. She wasn't the kind of trainer who craved the spotlight, but her work often placed her in it. In fact, in 1983, she even made an appearance in a marine-themed feature film, a small but symbolic moment that cemented her presence in the world of marine animal entertainment. Back then, orca trainers were celebrities in their own right, standing on the backs of killer whales, diving into pools from 30 feet high, smiling to the crowd as a 6-ton predator obeyed their hand signals with ballet-like precision. But to those who knew her personally, Rachel wasn't just a showwoman. She was a caretaker, a mentor, a woman who spent decades building relationships with animals many would never dare to approach. Her bond with the orcas was more than professional. It was emotional. She knew their moods, their quirks, their feeding schedules, their body language. Some said she could tell when something was wrong just by a flick of a dorsal fin. Over the years, she trained dozens of whales, many from birth. She gave them names, celebrated their birthdays, even mourned their deaths. And with every new generation of trainers who entered SeaWorld's ranks, Rachel Thomas was the one they turned to. Her calm demeanor, her encyclopedic memory of whale behavior, her no-nonsense commitment to safety. It all made her the cornerstone of SeaWorld's animal training program. But she was more than a trainer. Rachel was also a mother. 2 daughters, both grown, often visited her backstage. They'd watched her perform since they were toddlers, cheering as their mom leaped into icy water alongside orcas. And when asked how they felt about her line of work, they'd always smile and say, "She was born to do this." Her colleagues agreed. Rachel had a kind of instinct that couldn't be taught. New hires would often follow her around during early shifts, trying to absorb even a fraction of her knowledge. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. The orcas listened to her, and so did everyone else. Yet for all her skill, Rachel understood the risks. She'd seen injuries. She knew orcas could turn in an instant. And after the high-profile death of trainer Dawn Brancheau in 2010, Rachel quietly stepped away from waterwork. SeaWorld had officially ended water-based performances, and trainers like Rachel adapted. They focused more on husbandry, medical care, and backstage interactions. Still dangerous, but far less theatrical. Despite the shift, Rachel's passion never faded. She remained one of the most trusted figures at SeaWorld's Orca Stadium, responsible for delicate procedures and high-level training. She was often called in for complex sessions, like removing debris from an orca's mouth or calming a distressed whale before a veterinary exam. And in June 2022, that's exactly what she was doing. No crowds, no cameras. Just Rachel, another senior trainer, and a large female orca named Malia, one of the whales she had known since birth. No one suspected it would be the last time Rachel Thomas would ever work poolside. Her name was Malia. Born on March 12, 2007, in a concrete pool at SeaWorld Orlando, Malia was a second-generation captive orca. Raised not in the wild oceans her species once ruled, but under the fluorescent lights and filtered waters of a marine park. She had never known the roar of waves or the freedom of deep seas. From the moment she opened her eyes, her world was glass, steel, and human interaction. At birth, Malia weighed a few hundred pounds. At 16 years old, she now tipped the scales at over 5,500 pounds and stretched over 20 feet long. Sleek, powerful, charismatic, she was one of SeaWorld's rising stars, frequently featured in daily demonstrations and husbandry sessions. Trainers often described her as intelligent, observant, and socially complex, but others used a different word, unpredictable. Even as a young calf, Malia had a reputation. While she often responded well to structured training, she was known to test boundaries. Trainers reported her showing signs of non-compliance, unexpected aggression during feeding sessions, and resistance during medical checkups. Nothing serious at first, just moments of defiance, a tail slap here, a delay in responding to a hand signal there. But in the world of orca training, small red flags often precede disaster. Over the years, staff kept detailed logs of Malia's behavior. Some entries noted her high energy, especially when she was separated from other whales. Others described her growing agitation during construction or maintenance around her habitat. And there were whispers, never confirmed publicly, about 2 separate sessions where she displayed sudden, intense agitation towards senior trainers. In both cases, protocols were followed. The trainers walked away, no one was hurt. Still, those moments left a mark. Malia wasn't just another orca, she was powerful and proud, and sometimes unpredictable. And yet she remained part of the rotation for demonstrations, enrichment exercises, and high-trust husbandry tasks. She was used to staff entering her space. Trainers often reached into her mouth to check teeth, apply gel, or remove objects. These interactions had become routine, controlled, seemingly safe. But routine can be deceiving. In the weeks leading up to the June incident, Malia had displayed a few subtle behavioral changes, minor shifts that only the most experienced trainers might catch. She hesitated more often during sessions. She ignored signals once or twice. And during a routine mouth inspection just days prior, she resisted holding still, a behavior she had performed reliably for years. Rachel Thomas noticed. She mentioned it to a colleague during a post-session debrief. Nothing dramatic, just a casual remark. Malia seems a little off this week. They logged the behavior, adjusted the training plan, moved forward. No alarms were raised. After all, Rachel had worked with Malia for over a decade. She had helped train her, played with her, fed her, even celebrated her birthdays. Their bond was strong, the trust was mutual, or so it seemed. And then it happened. It was the morning of June 24th, 2022. Behind the massive show pool of SeaWorld Orlando's Orca Stadium, in a quieter backstage area known to staff as Pool D, the atmosphere was calm. No spectators, no loudspeakers, just filtered water rippling gently in the soft hum of pumps running behind the scenes. Rachel Thomas was in her element. A senior trainer with more than 4 decades of experience, she moved with calm, confident precision. By her side was another senior trainer, both dressed in standard wetsuits. The task that day wasn't glamorous. There would be no flips or breaches, no rehearsals or performances, just a husbandry session, one of the quiet but critical routines that kept SeaWorld's marine mammals healthy. Recently, Malia had been seen mouthing paint chips that had begun to flake from the aging edges of the pool's infrastructure. These paint fragments, if swallowed, could pose serious health risks. So Rachel volunteered to inspect the orca's mouth. This wasn't unusual. Rachel had conducted similar checks dozens of times with Malia over the years. The two shared a familiar rhythm, a trust. Rachel gave the signal. Malia opened her mouth, holding it wide as she floated motionless at the pool's edge. Rachel stepped closer, crouching slightly. Her gloved hand moved carefully between Malia's lower jaw, probing gently for any debris. The other trainer stood nearby, monitoring the orca's posture and behavior. For the first few moments, everything was routine. Then, without warning, Malia's jaws slammed shut. A sickening, wet crack echoed through the concrete walls of the backstage pool. Rachel didn't scream immediately. The force of the bite had knocked the air from her lungs. Her arm, still inside Malia's mouth, was pinned in place. In that instant, everything changed. The second trainer lunged forward, shouting Malia's name, trying to issue the train release command. But Malia didn't respond. Rachel's body twisted in shock, half collapsing onto the pool ledge. Her face contorted in pain as she tried to stay calm. Blood began to cloud the water, slowly swirling around Malia's head. For 20, maybe 30 agonizing seconds, nothing broke the deadlock. Then, Malia shifted. Perhaps she heard the trainer's signal. Perhaps her instincts kicked in, but the Orca loosened her grip just enough for Rachel to pull back. Her arm emerged mangled and bleeding, the wetsuit torn, bone likely broken. The other trainer dragged her away from the water. "Trainer down!" he shouted into his radio. "We've had an incident. Trainer's hurt. Backstage pool. We need EMS now." Within minutes, emergency responders arrived on the scene. Rachel was conscious but pale, gripping what remained of her arm with trembling fingers. Her training, her years of composure under pressure, kept her from panicking. But the damage was undeniable. Staff rushed to create a safety perimeter around Pool D. Malia was moved into an adjoining area and kept under close observation. Senior zoological managers were alerted. The show schedule for the day was quietly suspended. Back in the medical bay, Rachel received initial stabilization before being transported to Orlando Regional Medical Center. The extent of the damage to her arm would require immediate surgery. Later, orthopedic specialists confirmed that multiple bones had been fractured, soft tissue torn, and nerve damage likely. SeaWorld officials began reviewing surveillance footage of the incident within the hour. But to the public, nothing had happened. No press release, no official statement. The show went on, just with one less familiar face. Rachel Thomas was rushed out of SeaWorld Orlando's backstage area just minutes after the attack. The paramedics met her near the service gate off Central Florida Parkway, where security cleared the way for a direct hospital transfer. The radio dispatch had been blunt: trainer injury, possible crush trauma, major blood loss. Inside the ambulance, Rachel drifted in and out of consciousness. Her wetsuit had been cut open, the exposed arm swollen and twisted unnaturally. Beneath the skin, muscle tissue was torn, bone splintered. This wasn't a surface bite, it was a crushing clamp from a 5,500-pound apex predator. She arrived at Orlando Regional Medical Center just after noon. The trauma team was already prepped. Back at SeaWorld, the mood was grim. The area around Pool D was sealed off. Animal care teams began monitoring Malia's behavior, heart rate, appetite, any signs of distress. But Malia appeared calm, still, almost detached from the chaos she had just caused. Within hours, an internal memo was circulated among SeaWorld staff. Until further notice, training protocols with Malia are to be adjusted. All close contact sessions suspended. Use protected contact only. The memo didn't assign blame. It didn't speculate. But to seasoned trainers, the message was clear. Malia was no longer trusted. And yet, the public heard almost nothing. SeaWorld issued only a brief, generalized statement that day. It read, "One of our animal care staff members sustained a non-life-threatening injury during a routine session. She is receiving care, and we are reviewing the incident in accordance with our safety protocols." No mention of the Orca, no mention of the bite, and certainly no mention of the severity. But inside the park, the shock lingered. Rachel Thomas had been a fixture at SeaWorld for decades. Her absence was noticed immediately. Younger trainers whispered anxiously during break room conversations. Some questioned whether they'd ever work with Malia again. Others began revisiting the long list of previous Orca incidents, both at SeaWorld and beyond. Later that week, as required by federal law, the incident was officially reported to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. The report noted the following. Date of incident, June 24, 2022. Injury description, crushing injury to upper extremity. Treatment, hospitalization required, emergency surgery performed. Cause, bite injury during animal husbandry session. This OSHA report would remain publicly accessible, but virtually no news outlet picked it up. There were no interviews, no press conferences, no investigative pieces. For most guests still visiting SeaWorld Orlando that summer, it was business as usual. The killer whale shows continued. The music played. Children cheered as orcas leapt high into the air. But behind the curtain, the silence was heavy. A trainer was in a hospital bed with a destroyed arm. An orca was under heightened supervision. And SeaWorld had a new incident on its hands, one it wouldn't want the world to see. Following the incident, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, officially launched an investigation into the events at SeaWorld Orlando. This was no small matter. The injury to Rachel Thomas was documented in federal workplace injury records, accessible to the public. A stark reminder of the risks trainers face every day. The official OSHA incident report described the event plainly. Orca bit down on trainer's arm while removing foreign objects from mouth. The language was clinical, stripped of emotion, just facts on paper. But behind the words lay questions that SeaWorld would rather avoid. Despite the severity of Rachel's injuries, a broken arm, extensive tissue damage, no fines or citations were publicly announced at the time. SeaWorld's operations at the park continued without interruption. Shows resumed, trainers returned to their pools. The orca performances carried on as if nothing had happened. But then nearly 3 years later, in March of 2025, OSHA delivered a significant update. The agency issued a serious citation under the General Duty Clause, stating that SeaWorld had failed to provide a workplace free from recognized hazards, including bites, blunt force trauma, drowning. The proposed penalty, $16,550. SeaWorld was given 15 business days to either comply, request an informal hearing, or contest the citation. Still, no major policy changes were made public. And once again, SeaWorld offered no official comment. For those watching from the sidelines, the silence spoke volumes. Was this truly just a workplace accident? Or was it a warning sign of something far more preventable, something the marine park chose to downplay? The OSHA investigation closed quietly, with few answers and limited public accountability. For Rachel Thomas, the pain and recovery were deeply personal. For SeaWorld, it became yet another chapter in a long history of trainer injuries involving captive orcas. And for the public, a troubling question remained. What does it really take to keep humans safe when working with nature's most powerful predators confined in artificial pools? The attack on Rachel Thomas didn't just rattle SeaWorld Orlando, it echoed through the entire marine park industry. Former trainers, many now vocal critics, spoke out about a culture of fear and silence that still grips the profession. John Hargrove, a former orca trainer turned whistleblower, has repeatedly described the tense atmosphere behind the scenes. Trainers still work in fear. The culture hasn't changed. Injuries happen because the animals are powerful, but more often because safety protocols are ignored or watered down to keep the shows running. His words carry weight, especially after the release of the documentary Blackfish in 2013, a film that exposed the harsh realities of orca captivity and the deadly risks to trainers. The public saw that film as a wake-up call, but insiders say not much has truly changed. In the wake of Rachel's attack, animal rights advocates pointed to the incident as further proof of systemic issues. It's the same story decade after decade. Orcas confined in concrete tanks, stressed and frustrated, lash out. Trainers pay the price. The question is, why are we still allowing this to happen? Closer to home, emotional statements surfaced from those who knew Rachel Thomas personally. Her closest friends and family, who had always admired her passion and dedication, were left devastated. One close colleague, speaking on condition of anonymity, said she loved those animals like family. She believed in what she was doing. She didn't deserve this. No one does. Despite the growing concerns and outcry, SeaWorld maintained a tight-lipped approach. Their public relations team issued no new statements beyond the initial, vague injury notice. The corporation emphasized its commitment to safety and animal welfare, but critics accused them of putting profits before people. Industry insiders reported that behind closed doors, trainers were quietly reminded to avoid discussing the incident publicly. The message was clear: protect the brand, minimize risk, and keep the shows going. But for Rachel Thomas, For her colleagues and for the wider world watching, the silence spoke louder than any corporate statement ever could. The question remains, how long can this fragile balance hold before another tragedy occurs? Rachel Thomas survived the attack, but the injury was life-changing. She never returned to active Orca training, stepping back from the world she had dedicated her life to. Despite the severity of the incident, there were no official policy changes announced by SeaWorld following the attack. The routine continued, the shows went on, and the risks remain. This silence raises a haunting question. How many more injuries will it take before we finally question the true cost of captivity? A final note from the OSHA safety summary reminds us, employers must ensure a safe workplace, especially when working with dangerous animals. Failure to address known risks puts lives in jeopardy. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share to help raise awareness about the realities of captive orcas and the dangers faced by those who work with them. Your support helps keep these important conversations alive. Thanks for watching, and always stay safe. Remember, wild is wild.